My boyfriend is paranoid that I'm cheating because my new stretch marks look like nail scratches. My name is Emily, a 24-year-old woman navigating the intricate dance of love and life with my boyfriend, Jack, who is 25. We've been together for 3 years, a period marked by highs and lows, laughter and tears, and the steady march towards understanding and trust. Our relationship began in the most unassuming of ways, a chance encounter at a mutual friend's barbecue. I remember the day vividly, the smell of grilled burgers wafting through the air, the sound of laughter and clinking glasses, and the warm summer breeze that seemed to whisper promises of something special. Jack and I were introduced by our friend Sarah, who had been trying to set us up for months. I was initially hesitant, having just come out of a tumultuous relationship, but Jack's easy smile and genuine interest in getting to know me slowly chipped away at my reservations. Our first conversation was about our mutual love for hiking, and it wasn't long before we were planning weekend trips to nearby trails. Those early days were filled with discovery and excitement, the kind of heady rush that comes with new love. Fast forward to the present, and we've settled into a cozy rhythm. We share a modest apartment in the city, a 2-bedroom space that we've made our own with mismatched furniture and walls adorned with photos from our adventures. Jack works as a software developer, a job that keeps him busy but allows for a flexible schedule. I, on the other hand, work as a freelance writer, a career that lets me work from home and be my own boss. Our living situation is comfortable, and though we have our disagreements, we've managed to build a life that feels stable and supportive. Recently, I've been on a personal journey to gain weight. For most of my life, I've struggled with being slightly underweight, a condition that left me feeling self-conscious and often drained my energy. With Jack's encouragement and my own determination, I embarked on a mission to put on some pounds in a healthy way. I started eating more balanced meals, incorporating strength training into my exercise routine, and keeping a close eye on my progress. In a few short months, I managed to gain about 7 pounds, and for the first time in years, I felt a sense of accomplishment when I looked in the mirror. However, this newfound weight came with unexpected changes. My body, adjusting to the rapid increase, began to show signs of stretching skin. Bright red and purple marks appeared on my thighs and buttocks, stretch marks, a normal but surprising result of my efforts. I did my best to embrace them, reminding myself that they were a testament to my hard work and dedication to improving my health. Jack was supportive, often complimenting me on my progress and reassuring me that the stretch marks were nothing to be ashamed of. A typical day in our lives starts with the soft beep of Jack's alarm clock at 6:30 a.m. He's an early riser, often heading out for a morning run before diving into his work. I usually wake up around 7 a.m., greeted by the aroma of fresh coffee that Jack prepares before leaving for his run. Mornings are my favorite time of day, a quiet period where I can gather my thoughts and plan my tasks. I sit by the window with my coffee, watching the city come to life, and then settle down at my desk to write. Jack returns from his run around 8 a.m., sweaty but invigorated. We have breakfast together, a simple meal of eggs and toast, sometimes accompanied by a smoothie. Our conversations during breakfast are a mix of work plans, random musings, and shared jokes. After breakfast, Jack heads to his home office, and I return to my writing. The next few hours are spent in productive silence, punctuated by the occasional query or shared snippet from our respective tasks. By lunchtime, we both need a break. We usually eat together, taking the time to reconnect and discuss our progress. Afternoons are a bit more relaxed. Jack might have a few video calls, while I take a walk to clear my head or run some errands. Evenings are our time. We cook dinner together, experiment with new recipes, or indulge in our favorite comfort foods. After dinner, we might watch a movie, play a board game, or simply talk about our day. It's a routine that we've grown accustomed to, a comforting pattern that reinforces our bond. On the day everything changed, our routine started as usual. Jack had gone for his morning run, and I was enjoying my coffee by the window. The sky was a pale blue, streaked with the golden hues of dawn. Birds chirped outside, adding a melodic backdrop to the quiet of our apartment. I relished these moments of solitude, savoring the warmth of the coffee mug in my hands and the peacefulness of the early hour. I had planned to spend the day working on a new article about sustainable living practices, a topic I was passionate about. My notes were spread out on the desk, ready for me to dive into once I finished my coffee. Jack, meanwhile, had a series of meetings lined up for the day. He worked from home most of the time, his job as a software developer allowing him the flexibility to be present, even if his mind was often absorbed in code and algorithms. The morning passed without incident. Jack returned from his run, flushed and energized, and we enjoyed a hearty breakfast together. We talked about our plans for the day and shared a few laughs over a funny video I had found online. After breakfast, we retreated to our respective workspaces. I immersed myself in my writing, the hours slipping by as I crafted sentences and organized my thoughts. By noon, the sun was high in the sky, casting a warm glow through the windows. We met for lunch, as we always did, a small ritual that helped us stay connected despite our busy schedules. Jack had made sandwiches, and we sat at the kitchen table, chatting about our work and upcoming plans. It was during this light-hearted conversation about an upcoming trip to the mountains that Jack first noticed the marks. We had been planning this trip for weeks, eager to escape the hustle and bustle of city life and reconnect with nature. I was excitedly talking about the hiking trails and the cozy cabin we had booked when I noticed Jack's gaze drift downward. "Emily, what are those marks on your butt?" he asked, his tone a mix of curiosity and concern. I glanced down, momentarily confused before realizing he had noticed the stretch marks that had recently appeared. I felt a flush of embarrassment but quickly composed myself. "Oh, those are just stretch marks," I replied, trying to keep my tone casual. "I've been gaining some weight, remember? It's just my skin adjusting." Jack's frown deepened. "They don't look like stretch marks. They look more like scratches." His words hung in the air, heavy with unspoken accusations. I felt a pang of frustration and sadness. "Jack, they're stretch marks. They might look red and angry now, but that's just because they're new. They come from underneath the skin, not from the outside." Michael's eyes narrowed slightly as he examined them, but his expression remained unreadable. The room, once filled with the lightness of a leisurely day, now seemed to close in on us with a tangible tension. He stared at me, his expression a mix of disbelief and confusion. "Are you sure? They really don't look like stretch marks to me." I nodded, trying to stay calm. "Yes, I'm sure. You can even look it up if you want. Stretch marks can look different on different people, but that's what they are." "Are you accusing me of lying?" I asked, the hurt clear in my voice. It was the first time in our 3-year relationship that I felt a chasm of mistrust opening between us. He didn't respond immediately. Instead, his eyes shifted away from me, fixing on the floor as if it held the answer he needed. Without a word, tears welled up in his eyes, an unusual sight for Michael, who always prided himself on his composure. I reached out to touch his arm, but he gently pulled away and left the room, leaving me alone with a mix of emotions swirling inside me. The sound of the front door closing echoed through the apartment, marking his departure as clearly as it shattered the peace of our day. The hours that followed were long and heavy. I sat on the edge of the bed, the indentations of his fingers still visible on my skin, replaying the conversation over and over in my mind. I couldn't understand where his sudden doubt had stemmed from. Had I missed signs of his insecurities before this? My thoughts spiraled, touching each memory, trying to find evidence of mistrust I might have overlooked. When Michael finally returned, the sun had begun to set, casting long shadows across the room that seemed to echo the darkness settling between us. I knew we needed to talk, to clear the air, or the gap that had opened up would only widen. "I want to talk about earlier," I started as soon as I saw him. He nodded, his face weary, his usual bright eyes dimmed. We sat down together, the space on the couch between us feeling like a gulf. "Do you have any reason not to trust me, or do you need reassurance or more attention in our relationship?" I asked, my voice soft but firm. It was crucial to understand his perspective, even if his suspicions had hurt me deeply. He stayed silent for a long time, his eyes not meeting mine. When he finally spoke, his voice was low. "No, but those marks. They don't make sense," he admitted, sounding as confused as he was uncertain. Trying to bridge the distance between us, I offered, "You can go through my phone whenever you want to," hoping transparency would reassure him. "Maybe you should talk to one of your friends about it," I added, thinking that perhaps external support might help him process his feelings better than I could alone. But he didn't like that suggestion. His face closed off, and he stood abruptly. "I don't need to talk to anyone," he said sharply, then stormed off to the other room, leaving me once again alone, the weight of our unresolved conflict pressing down on me like a physical force. We had not spoken since. As the door slammed shut behind Michael, the sharp sound seemed to cleave the air, leaving a palpable silence that settled heavily around me. Left alone in the diminishing light of the evening, I felt a cold draft sweep through the room, as if the open window was allowing the chill from outside to seep into the apartment, and into the spaces between us. In the quiet that followed, my mind began to whirl with thoughts and emotions. Shock was the first to settle in, thick and suffocating. I never imagined that Michael, the person I trusted most in the world, could suggest, even indirectly, that I might be unfaithful. The absurdity of his accusation that my stretch marks were scratches from someone else's nails was bewildering. Confusion followed close behind the shock. Why would Michael think such a thing? We had always been open with each other, sharing our thoughts and feelings without hesitation. This level of mistrust was new, alien. I replayed our conversation in my head, his words echoing, "They don't look like stretch marks," and I could feel a tinge of frustration bubbling inside me. How could he not trust my words? Sitting on the edge of our bed, the dim light of the bedside lamp casting long shadows across the room, I allowed my mind to drift to previous instances that might have hinted at this sudden burst of jealousy. There was that time at a company party when I had laughed a little too long at a coworker's joke, and I noticed Michael's eyes narrow across the room. Or when he had asked, with a thinly veiled tension, who I was texting late one evening when it was only my sister sharing updates about her new baby. Each memory, each little moment I could recall, seemed now like a thread in a larger tapestry I had not seen the whole of. Was there always an undercurrent of doubt that I had failed to notice? Or was this insecurity something new, something brought on by circumstances I could not understand? Feeling overwhelmed, I reached for my phone. I dialed my best friend, Sarah, needing the comfort of her voice, the reassurance of her perspective. She answered on the second ring, her voice a soothing balm to my frayed nerves. "Hey, what's up? You sound upset," she said, her tone immediately shifting to concern. I poured out the events of the day, my words tumbling out in a rush. As I spoke, I could hear Sarah's steady breathing on the other end of the line, a reminder of the calm I was desperately seeking. "That sounds really tough, but you know, Michael might just be going through something he's not ready to talk about," Sarah offered, always the voice of reason. "But it's also important that he knows he can't project his insecurities onto you." Her words were rational, but they only provided a small comfort against the torrent of emotions I felt. After we hung up, the loneliness crept back, heavier than before. The anxiety started to set in then, gnawing at the edges of my mind. What if Michael's doubts had roots deeper than just the misunderstandings of today? What if these seeds of mistrust grew into something more, something that could not be mended? The thought made my heart race, and I felt a profound sadness at the potential loss of something so dear. I felt misunderstood, isolated in my own relationship. It was as if Michael and I were suddenly speaking different languages, unable to understand each other's words, let alone our feelings. The realization was crushing. The emotional toll was more exhausting than I had anticipated. Sleep eluded me as I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, the shadows seeming to mock my distress. Each time I closed my eyes, I saw Michael's tearful eyes, heard the disbelief in his voice, felt the growing distance between us. The sadness was a heavy cloak I couldn't seem to shed, and I missed him terribly, even though he was just in the next room. As dawn broke, the first light of morning casting a pale glow into the room, I knew something had to change. I couldn't let this misunderstanding fester and poison what we had built together. But as I prepared to face the day, to face Michael, the weight of uncertainty was a constant companion, making each step feel like wading through treacle. The house felt silent and cold when Michael finally came back. It was as if his departure had taken the warmth with him, and now his return brought back not the comfort of his presence, but the shadow of our unresolved issues. I had been sitting at the kitchen table, pretending to be absorbed in a book, but really, my mind had been racing with thoughts about our conversation, about his accusations, and about the future of our relationship. When I heard the door open, my heart skipped. I closed the book and stood up, smoothing my sweater, not sure what to expect. Would he apologize, or would he continue to doubt me? The uncertainty was gnawing at me. "Michael," I called out as he entered the kitchen. He paused, his eyes meeting mine briefly before looking away. He looked tired, his usual bright eyes were clouded with something I couldn't quite decipher, frustration, confusion, sorrow. "We need to talk," I said, my voice more steady than I felt. He nodded silently, hanging his coat on the rack and reluctantly joining me at the table. We sat across from each other, the tension thick in the air. "Michael, I want to understand why you felt the way you did today," I began, trying to keep my tone neutral. "Do you have any reasons to distrust me, or is there something else that's bothering you? Do you need more reassurance or more attention from me in our relationship?" He looked at his hands for a long moment before responding. His voice, when he finally spoke, was barely above a whisper. "I don't know, it's just those marks, they caught me off guard. I trust you, but I couldn't make sense of them. They don't look like what I thought stretch marks looked like." I listened quietly, keeping my emotions in check. I understand that it was unexpected, But you know I've been trying to gain weight. The doctor said rapid weight gain could cause stretch marks like these. But something had shifted in Michael. Instead of acknowledging the explanation, his face darkened, and his words became harsh, sharp like shards of glass. No, this doesn't make sense. Who have you been with? He shouted, his voice escalating as he began to list names, male colleagues, friends, even distant acquaintances. Each name felt like an accusation, a wound. I stood there, stunned into silence for a moment, my heart pounding in my chest. Michael, stop. Why would you say those things? Tears began to form, blurring my vision as I heard him continue, not just questioning my fidelity, but now attacking my profession. He didn't stop there. His anger spilled over to everything connected to me, my friends, my parents. And what about your so-called supportive friends? What role do they play in this? He spat out, each word laced with venom. I felt my own anger rising, hot and fierce. How dare you? I cried out, my voice cracking. The hurt was overwhelming. I was shaking, sobbing loudly, the tears streaming down my face. But he seemed lost to his rage, unable to see the pain he was inflicting, his suspicions spiraling out of control. The apartment, our home, felt like it was closing in on me, the walls echoing with the destructive force of his accusations. I watched, heartbroken, as he swept his arm across the coffee table, sending books and small trinkets crashing to the floor. His behavior was unlike anything I had ever seen from him. It scared me, seeing him like this, consumed by baseless jealousy. Michael, please, this isn't you, I pleaded between sobs, trying to reach out to him, to pull him back from the edge of this rage-filled precipice. But he was beyond my reach, his words slicing through the last threads of my composure. Finally, I couldn't bear it any longer. If you can't trust me, if you can't respect me, then what are we even doing? I shouted, my voice hoarse from crying. You need help, Michael, but so do I. We can't go on like this. Silence fell as my words hung in the air. He stopped, his chest heaving, looking around at the chaos he had caused, at the woman he claimed to love now crying uncontrollably because of his actions. It seemed to dawn on him then, the gravity of what had just unfolded between us. The moment was a painful wake-up call, a stark revelation of how deeply our trust had been eroded and how much healing would be necessary if there was any hope for us to move forward. Whether that path would be one we could walk together remained to be seen. Update. As I sat alone in the dim light of our living room, the shadows seemed to stretch across the walls, mirroring the darkening thoughts swirling in my mind. The echoes of Michael's angry words hung heavy in the air, a stark reminder of the storm that had just passed. He had stormed out again, leaving behind a silence that was thick with unrest and sorrow. This wasn't the first time jealousy had reared its ugly head in our relationship, but tonight, it had turned into sheer madness. Over the past year, I had noticed a troubling pattern in Michael's behavior. It started with small, seemingly insignificant comments about how I dressed for work or the occasional coffee with a friend. But gradually, these comments had morphed into accusations, heated arguments that would end in his tearful apologies and promises to change. Each time, I believed him, hoping our love was strong enough to overcome these bouts of insecurity. But as I replayed those moments now, a chilling realization washed over me: it was getting worse, not better. Tonight had been different. The intensity of his anger, the sharpness of his words, everything was magnified. He hadn't just been upset or confused, he had been furious, destructive. The apartment bore the physical marks of his rage, with shattered glass from a picture frame we had picked out together last Christmas lying scattered across the floor like fragments of our once happy memories. As I gathered the broken pieces, my mind raced with questions and fears about our future. Could I continue living like this, walking on eggshells, always anxious about what might set him off next? Was love really supposed to be this hard, this painful? My thoughts were interrupted by the sound of the front door. Michael was back, his face pale and his eyes red-rimmed from crying. He looked broken, remorseful. For a moment, my heart ached for him, for us. But then I remembered the fear, the feeling of helplessness as he had yelled and thrown things around, accusing me of betraying him over innocuous stretch marks that were merely the result of my efforts to be healthier. We need to talk, I said firmly as he stepped closer, his expression one of contrition. I know, I'm so sorry, he stammered, his voice cracking. I don't know what got into me. It's just. Seeing those marks, it scared me. I thought I was losing you. His words pierced me with a sadness so deep it was almost physical. Michael, your jealousy isn't new. It's been building up, and every time, it chips away a little more of my trust, my sense of safety with you. I love you, but I can't live like this. We can't keep going through these cycles. He nodded, swallowing hard. I know I need help. I'll do anything, see a therapist, anything you need. Please, don't give up on us. But as much as I wanted to believe him, the fear of what might happen if we stayed together haunted me. What if his jealousy turned even more destructive? What if next time, he didn't just break things but broke us beyond repair? I need to think, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. I need some space to figure out what's best for us, for me. I'm scared, Michael. I'm scared of what you might do, what you might think of me. That you might believe I betrayed you even if we just break up. He looked devastated, but he nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. Okay, I'll stay at my brother's tonight. Take all the time you need, he replied, his tone resigned. After he left, the silence returned, but now it was a silence of solitude, not of anticipation. I pondered over everything, our love, the good times we had shared, and the darkness that had slowly enveloped us. I wondered if ending things would lead him to think I had someone else, if it would prompt him to do something drastic out of a misguided sense of betrayal. The decision lay heavily on me. Continuing as we were was untenable, but the implications of ending things were frightening in their own right. Either choice carried its own set of fears and potential regrets. I realized then that the most immediate need was not just deciding whether to stay or leave, but ensuring both our safeties, emotional and physical. Perhaps, a mediated conversation with a therapist present, or a clear safety plan, would be the first steps. Ending a relationship scared me, but continuing in fear scared me more. As the night deepened, so did my resolve. Tomorrow, I would call a counselor, someone who could guide us through this, whether it ended in reconciliation or separation. But tonight, I would allow myself to grieve, the loss of the relationship I thought we had, the future I had imagined, and the peace I so desperately craved.